Good afternoon, everyone. And for those joining around the world, as our amazing guest, Francois du Toit is, goeienaand, Francois.
Goeienaand, Kate. Very nice to be with you this evening, or this afternoon in your case, but in my case, good evening.
Yes, Francois, it's wonderful to have you back. And we're kind of doing a special episode here as we've recently surpassed a year living life in this pandemic and thinking back to when you were previously on the show. I feel like it was about a year ago. And we talked a lot about, being vulnerable and challenges in business. And little did we know what was to come and what was ahead. And, there's been a lot of tragedies over the year and a lot of tough times that people have had, but there's also been so much good that has happened. And I know for you, it's been your best year in business. For me and for so many other people that you and I have both talked to and had on our respective shows, there are a ton of wonderful stories out there. So this whole episode is just dedicated to all of the good things that have come out of the last year.
Yeah, and I look so forward to getting into all of that. It's just we've got to push 12 months into 30 minutes, so let's do it.
We do. So we are going to start, we're covering sort of three key topics throughout this. And so the first topic is looking at all the new relationships that have been built and really how the world both got smaller and came together.
Yeah, I must say it is an amazing journey that, Kate, and sorry if I jump in there, but, it's been the people that I've met because of what we started doing during this time when we had no idea of what we had to do or what we were going to do or, what was going to pull us through all of this. It's just been incredible in my world, and hopefully we can talk a little bit about that, just how it happened that the world got so small so quickly.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into that because that's been one of the coolest things. And, lots of people know I've spent a lot of time traveling the world and I've long felt the world has been pretty small. But this last year, interestingly, it has felt so much smaller. So share some of your experiences with that.
Yeah, no. So some may or may not know that, when lockdown came around in South Africa, it was, I think, the 27th of March when we went into lockdown, but we knew like a week before almost that this is now coming. And I was totally flabbergasted and thinking, my business is definitely not going to survive this. It has been a, up and down journey like it is for any new business for a few years. And then comes this thing that I didn't even know was coming. Will teach me a lesson to watch the news a little bit more. But, suddenly we find ourselves in this world where, one, you're very isolated. You can't go anywhere. We're in full lockdown. We called it level 5 lockdown. And here you are sitting at home, having no idea what you're going to do. You can't do business with anyone. You can't talk to anyone really. And you just sit there thinking like, so this is what it's come to, and that's how it started. And then out of, I think, sheer desperation, I think is maybe the right word, is I just decided I was going to go live. And I had some inspiration from watching Pat Flynn over on his channel on SPI. He does a lot of speaking or he talks a lot and teaches a lot on podcasting and all these things. And what he started doing was going live every single day. And I thought to myself, but that's something that I could do. And that's what happened. So I decided I was going to go live every single day for as long as lockdown lasted. And looking back, it's very funny because it was going to last for 21 days only. And then 75 days later, we were still going live every single day because we were still in lockdown. But anyway,
so every single day, Francois, we need to emphasize you actually mean every single day.
Yeah, every single day for an hour. So it was every single weekday. It didn't matter what type of day it was, whether it was Monday or Sunday. It didn't matter what kind of holiday it was and what type of religious day it was. We went live. I went live every single day for an hour. And initially, the funny thing was, because I just want to give a little bit of context of where this or how this started, is I thought I was going to go live and then let people ask me questions and I will answer and we'll do that for an hour. And then the very first episode, about 20 minutes in, I realized Francois, maybe you should come up with some ideas to talk about yourself because people are not going to ask you questions. In fact, that first episode, I only had one viewer. And I did some stats the other day when we celebrated our first year, and it's amazing that of the first 10 episodes, 6 of them, I think, was in the bottom in terms of views. So if I decided to stop then, I wouldn't be standing here talking to you tonight, I suppose. But what happened through all of this is that people started, as they started watching and telling each other, and more people started watching, the amazing thing that happened, and Kate, you were also instrumental in this, is you started introducing me to people in the UK and in Australia, and and that's where I feel like the world got so much smaller, and we got to meet new people. I would never ever have met new people if it wasn't for this, because I never would have had time to go live every single day. I never would have had time to come up with a certain kind of format or something to talk about, or to get to interview certain guests. And that's, I think, where, like, I'm sitting back today and I'm thinking, Francois, you should have done this a long time ago. But that would never, ever have happened unless the pandemic came around. So I really feel like this is one of the amazing things. And to see what people do for you and for others without you even asking, I think that shows you, like, we stand together even when we think we don't.
Yeah, and as Cobus just said, and he's so true, better late than never. And, it was just so fascinating watching your show. And I love that story of persistence and how easy it is to, do the first 10 episodes and go, nobody's watching. This isn't gaining any traction. Why am I doing this? And it's so easy to start those things. And especially in that time that we were all in, you kind of mentioned feeling a bit depressed and, what's going to come next. And you just kept at it. And we're seeing comments come in here. And I know from being on your show and seeing it, the community that has built and how that helped so many people meet each other and come together and grow. And what I think was so great about that time is actually that everybody was in the exact same position. Every single person in the entire world was in this complete uncertainty, position of lockdown. Everything had changed. And so we just saw so much more grace that we gave ourselves. And that's one of my favorite lines of the last year. My friend Sophia Berra says it often, and she was on the podcast a year ago, and she says, just give yourself grace. And so not only do we learn to give ourselves grace, but we gave other people more grace. And we are, as humans, wired to help each other. And so, that I think is something that came out a lot more, is that even when we might be feeling a little bit uncertain and, maybe hopeless at times, you're like, okay, if I can help somebody else, then that helps me. And then you just keep all this goodness going round and round.
Yeah. And you know what is amazing? Something that I realized is that sometimes you're helping some, other people without you even knowing it. So sometimes you can be very intentional about, I want to help Kate, or I want to help somebody. But then there's a lot of people that watch us, whether they watch live or watch the recordings, or that see some of the things that you post and they go check it out. And then, like, months afterwards, or in my case, like a year later, you find out what this has meant to other people, and they didn't even, like, I wasn't deliberate in saying, I'm going to do something for Kate. But what we did, just, it did do something for other people. And then hearing those stories is so inspirational. And at the end of the day, those are the things that kept me going. You decide that, or you tell people that, listen, I'm going to show up every single day. I don't care whether you're here or not. I will be here every single day. And then you do that. And then every time there's at least one person there, and, sometimes 10, 20 and 30 people that's there. And that is sort of what keeps you going. And, often you feel like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. How often it happened that I go live 8 o'clock in the morning, and 6 o'clock that morning I'm coming up with, I'm going to talk about this. So that happened often, because at some stage you start running out of ideas. And but that was the incredible thing, and the support and just the way that people encourage. And also I think the other part of this is, yes, you introduced me to a few people. I introduced you to a few people. Other people have introduced other people, but I got to meet so many people from South Africa through this. And what I saw was happening is them starting to connect with one another. And that's where the community part started coming in. That was beautiful for me to see.
Yeah, and the other thing I will kind of note is that we don't always take the opportunity to actually let people know how much their content means to us. That's something I've tried to do, and hopefully I've done it with you because I've tried to tell you so many times throughout the year how inspirational you have been to me. And it's certainly when we're kind of sitting back and looking and watching, and especially those times that you're not in the best place, it can be easy to watch other people and have that kind of get yourself down. But hopefully there's content that you're consuming out there and people that are inspiring you that you're watching and following. And, we don't always take the time to reach out and say, thank you for that. So the flip side of that is all of us remembering whatever you're doing. If your audience is only ever 20 people, know that actually it's probably bigger than that your message is reaching further and inspiring more people. Like I said, we just don't take the time to say thank you. So be proud of those 20 people, even if that's all there is, because that's 20
Yeah.
lives. That's incredible.
Yeah, you know how easy it is for us to say, if there's just one person that watches, or I make a difference in just one person's life, that will be amazing. And it is. It is truly, it takes one person to tell you, listen, you have no idea what happened because of what you said at that point in time. And it's like, it's amazing, but I mean, until there's only that one person, then one starts doubting yourself. Then suddenly it feels like it isn't enough, like you want to reach more. And it's so important what you're saying is you have to remind yourself that whatever difference you're making, it matters. It doesn't matter how big or how small it is, it matters.
Yeah, and quality over quantity. That's just such an important thing to remember in any business. And, if you have 500 leads coming in or prospects coming in a year, but they're not the right people, that's just a distraction. So focusing on those people you really can help is super important. So switching kind of thinking about priorities and whatnot. So the second thing we want to talk about is kind of that this has shifted a lot of people's priorities and how so many people in the world have refocused. And you mentioned that earlier, that, starting your show and doing all this, you're like, I should have done this years ago. That has happened to so many people. And it does often take something like this, and that's perfectly fine. But the amount of people that have even started incredible financial planning businesses during the pandemic, in the height of the pandemic, and they are oversubscribed with waiting lists. And I've talked to amazing financial planners around the world that have said, look, I never wanted to start my own business, or I didn't think I wanted to. I thought I was, a great employee and I had good benefits and a steady job. And people honestly saying, by doing this, I feel so much stronger. And I have learned so much about myself, and I have, skills and ambitions that I never knew that I had. And it's like, honestly, you've cried on your show. Like, I honestly feel like I'm about to cry because these conversations are just, I love it. It's been so, so inspiring.
I'm laughing now because it's easy when you're not crying to laugh at, it's like, I wanted to tell you before the show, Kate, please don't make me cry again tonight. But it is, it's so heartwarming, the things that one experience and that you notice around you. And I think one of the things that many people realize is that being an employee and being employed is not a safe option at all. It's the same risk, whether you have a business or whether you're employed, it's the same risk. Maybe you should try and have both. I don't know if that's the answer, but few people are really willing to put in the effort that it takes to do two things at the same time. But that doesn't matter. It depends on what works for you. But, I've seen so many people get to a situation where like, oh, I lost my job. I never thought I would lose my job. Now what? And they started having conversations that they never had before. The other beautiful thing for me, talking about this, that what happened with refocusing and new priorities and all of this is that you realize that suddenly I'm not traveling 2 hours in a car every day, getting to work or going to see clients or anything like that. So you suddenly realize, you know what, I now have extra time. The sad part of it that I saw is that a lot of people started working harder and they used those 2 hours to work. So at least, yes, you were in the car on your way to work previously, but you couldn't do much except phone clients, think, maybe listen to an audiobook, do things like that. Now suddenly you had 2 hours extra in a day where you could actually go and cycle or run or spend time with your spouse or I don't know, but do the things that was personal time that was given back to us. And many people, myself included, started using that. to do the things that I never get time for, that I, in other words, never prioritize. But then there were other people who said, oh, now I need to work even harder. And also I think some of the corporate businesses took advantage of that, and they sort of, now suddenly have back-to-back meetings and you have all these things that you need to do. So there's this yin and yang, both sides of that. So I think some people definitely took full advantage of the extra time and used it for it's personal time we got back. Others, unfortunately, invested more time into working for that.
Yeah, and that is a balance that we're still trying to figure out. Even though I have actually worked virtually the entire 16 years I've been in this industry, I spent the last year, and I actually took advantage of the fact that I was like, okay, everybody's slowing down right now. Nobody knows what's going on. Everybody's in a bit of state of a panic. So a year ago, I committed to myself, and I was like, if the only things that I get done in a day are that I sleep well, I exercise, and I eat well, that's all that matters. If I get nothing done for my business, if I don't build my business, if all I'm doing is taking care of myself and getting healthy, that's it. That's all that matters. And I had a lot of days like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm proud of myself, because it is so easy to go to that other side. And, if you do hear stories about the people that are having their best business year or starting new businesses, there can be that pressure there. But we know that stress is the most dangerous thing to the human body. It never leads anywhere good. And so I was like, this is actually the perfect time to slow down and to do that self-care and to give ourselves grace and not worry about building an amazing business, but building an amazing life and body and state of mental health.
Yeah, and it's so crucial, I don't know, I can only talk for myself when we start talking about health and looking after yourself and those because those are things that have been like way down in the priority list for me, and I'm paying the price for that at the moment. And when we started in August last year saying, listen, now we need to start taking control, then, it went so well and everything just sort of, I made so much progress, both myself and my wife in that regard. And then sort of as the lockdown started easing, we started getting back into this is this, I need to do this. And suddenly I'm again out of time to do the things that I'm actually doing. So this Easter weekend, for example, was fantastic because I went cycling twice. I can't remember, usually we used to go 3 times a week. Now I'm only cycling once a week, and it's definitely not enough. So it is really also making sure that the things that we started cultivating during this time, that we really stick to them and make them a priority. Because I can tell you right now that I feel like awful if I don't go cycle. And I'm not one of those guys that want to talk like I'm cycling, but it's just like it's become this thing for us, and it's something that we do together. It's something in which we progress together. And for me, that's the nice part, just to see where we were in August and where we're right now. When we were in August, I couldn't even walk up the road here or ride up the road here. It's not even 500 meters and I was done. And now we do over 30 Ks, So there's that progress that has happened, but now it's to stick to it and to really, prioritize that, because we've learned those lessons during this time. And it's so easy to go back. So we really need to be focused on that and be aware of how easy it is to just fall back into old habits, or even I don't even know if you can call that a habit, but into old ways of not doing the right stuff.
Well, and different people have different ways of staying accountable and remembering how good you feel after cycling or meditating or reading a book or whatever it is. And, depending on what your style is, find the thing that works best for you. But I think especially for financial planners, one of the things I love seeing is that you're actually setting a great example to your clients. So if you're a financial planner working 100 hours a week, I would like to hope that you're not recommending to your clients that in order to fulfill their financial plan, they also need to work 100 hours a week, which is going to lead to a lot of stress, which means maybe their retirement won't be quite as long as they might want it to be. So if you think about it, if that's a way that helps you hold yourself accountable, is to kind of be accountable to others, even though if it's not a specific group, and just think, I want to be that example to my clients. I want to show clients how important it is to have that family time, that personal time, take care of your physical, mental, and emotional health, and use that as we continue to come out of lockdown and make sure that we do continue to have the very best priorities for ourselves, our families, and our businesses.
Yeah, I fully agree. And something that I want to add on to that is when we talk to our clients, or when advisors talk to their clients, I think this was that opportune time to actually just have conversations with them. And it's something we said very early on, is that this is not the time for advice and for selling and for whatever it is that we do. This is now the time to check in with clients and and the advisors that have done that has seen, I think, a phenomenal return on their time, because at that point they had to invest a lot of time and effort into that. And I'm sure there's some of the people here in the audience, some of the advisors and planners that will attest to the difference that has made, now down the line. And there were some factions that felt like we had to do more, and we had to sell harder, and we had to market harder, and we had to prospect harder to get more clients. But it was the exact opposite. And I think, well, what I'm trying to get to is that the opportunity that was there was to really connect with your clients and to be there and help them make decisions, and for them to work through the things that they didn't have answers to. And even though we didn't have answers, at least then you went through it together, and there's a trust and a bond that formed there. And I think that also, means that there were so many wins during this time. If you took those, it's just, I don't know how long before another opportunity like that is going to come along.
Well, and Yvonne, I kept your comment up here because she's talking about, how much sort of firefighting there was throughout, and, rethinking priorities, and that she really didn't experience that slowdown. And that is the case for a lot of people. Either they had their busiest year yet, or they, were trying to adapt to this situation. And then you have kids at home and you have all this other stuff, which actually kind of gets us into the third point a little bit, which is getting into technology and how that really helped to move the world forward in a way. We've seen it so many times in so many articles that we really have kind of gone 10 years in a matter of 10 months. Yeah, and a thing or two about technology, Francois.
Well, it's my passion, to my wife's detriment, I think. But it's if I look at the things that people are doing and that they're asking about and that they're interested in, and that they're suddenly open to implementing and using in their businesses, a year ago they had no interest, like nothing. And that for me is the amazing thing. And if some people say 5 years, some say 10, I don't know if there's really a like real stats to prove that. But I believe that some people definitely came forward by 20 years because they were still back in 1995 with a dial-up modem.
They were 25 years behind. Really,
by choice.
So maybe that
choice.
might have been like 30 years, catch up and get ahead. Nice.
But I would say, let's say for those of us that have been like sort of staying with technology to a sense, we definitely like made those strides of 5 to 10 years in advance, because the technology suddenly, there was a huge adoption of things that have been there for quite a while, but we didn't really use it. It was, it's cool, but clients don't want that. And I think to a big degree, or to a large degree, that is true. But suddenly, it doesn't matter where you worked. If you were lucky to have kept your job, then you had to learn to use Zoom and Teams and Google Meet and whatever meeting software your business is using. And suddenly clients became like, this is actually not so bad. This is not so difficult. So I prefer doing this. And we've been talking a lot about whether things will go back to the way it was. I think to some extent it will, but it will mostly now remain where previously it was like, can't we maybe meet virtually? Is like, I think the question now will be, should we meet in person? Is it necessary to meet in person? And we definitely, I like sitting across from a table, having coffee, having a discussion, or being able to draw on a whiteboard and just try and figure things out. So those things are awesome, and we still need that. But I think where previously that was 95% of the things or the way that we did it, now it's going to be 20% that will do that, and the other 80% will probably something virtual.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing in watching a lot of businesses and people and seeing a lot of the shifts is that it removed a lot of preconceived notions notions that people have. And one of my favorite examples, I'm trying to remember who I was talking to, and I wonder if I was talking with you, Francois, very recently, but I've had this conversation a few times, is the idea that a lot of advisors that are in rural areas all over the world that work with, farmers, for example, and had this idea in their mind that, oh, farmers aren't tech savvy and they're not going to want to do virtual meetings. And like, farmers are some of the most tech savvy people out there. Like, the advancements in farming because of technology and how they monitor their crops and how they, do all that stuff is incredible. They're leaps and bounds. And so, we take these preconceived notions that then limit ourselves, and this knock down all those boundaries and all those walls. And people that think, oh, clients in their 60s aren't going to want to do video meetings. They like being at home and being able to, be comfortable and sit at their dining table and not have to drive and sit in traffic. So it was a really fun way of seeing that it was almost a forced mind shift that really is better for everyone. And I too love in-person meetings, but it's just given us a bit more flexibility and a different lens on things.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that those same 60, 65, 70-year-old parents and grandparents have been calling their children and their grandchildren overseas using WhatsApp video and, maybe FaceTime or some of those. So it's actually nothing funny for them. The only difference is they use their phone and not their computer. So, it's maybe not that far apart. And also I'm just having, like, you're talking about farmers. I'm now thinking in my head, I'm seeing like, you no longer need a border collie to herd sheep. You just have a drone. But I don't know if that works.
Yes.
So
no, that's exactly it. I was actually thinking that's
sure.
like you've got drones monitoring everything, and you've got all this stuff. It's incredible.
And I have to tell you this quick story before we run out of time, is that I put together a sort of a social marketing or social media marketing program for one of the big corporates here. And when we had the conversation around this, one of the things that that the particular person was concerned about that I was talking to is that, you look at that there's a certain demographic in the population of financial advisors that they have that this is aimed at, but they're not going to do it because they I don't want to say too old, but they've sort of said no, like that's not our thing. And the funny thing is what happened is that those same advisors that they thought were not going to take this and do something with, they did. And they were doing better and better every month. And then there's another part of the business, which isn't like, it's more of a separate kind of area of department or distribution channel, if you will. And they did not take these things and do something with it. And then 6 months later, it was a question of like, whoa, they're not doing well. These guys are actually doing well. And it just shows you, it's just about a mindset. It's got nothing to do with your age. And this is the one thing that a common friend, our friend that we share, that you introduced me to, Mr. Adam Owen. I don't know if I'm saying that right in English, but yes. Adam sort of, over at NextGen, they're always talking about, it's not about your age, it's a mindset thing. And that for me is so powerful. And there's so many examples of that we saw during this time as well. So it's been amazing. And this is like seeing Halley's Comet, like Halley's Comet is one of the things that I was going to see, because I think you only see that once every 75 years. So I saw it when I was like still in primary school, and now I saw this. So I can say, well, I was lucky to be, going through all of this and just seeing how people adapted. And that was the beautiful thing, is that when people had to, they did make the change.
Yeah, well, and your story reminded me, I was thinking about this just the other day because this just happened, but my father turned 70 last year, and he had a computer that we bought. I honestly think it was 11 or 12 years old. It was a MacBook, so they last forever, but it kept dying, and he's just never been a tech guy. He retired over a decade ago, and I never, honestly, ever in my life, right up there with Halley's Comet, never thought I would see my father get a smartphone, and he did. He has not ever in his life owned a mobile phone. And he bought a smartphone last July. And then he extra blew my mind by texting me at all. B, he used emojis. Then he got a new computer, and I finally convinced him to do some estate planning recently, referred hhim to an estate planner. And it was fascinating that he called me and he was like, hey, I don't know how to fill out this document. And I was like, well, forward it to me. And it was, in a Word document. He's on a Mac. And I was like, oh, why isn't it fillable? He's like, yeah, I thought he would send me a document that I could easily fill out online. I was like, I love this. I love that, like, my father has never been tech savvy. He was like, why can't I just do this easily? You know, so again, just those preconceived notions, and I think the estate planner that he worked with just assumed he would, I don't know, not want that. But I was like, don't assume that. People want it to be easy at all ages, and let's just keep making the world a little bit smaller, a little bit easier, while we all give ourselves a little more grace. And yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's such a fantastic story. I hope you're going to tell that a million times still to everybody you get a chance, because that's amazing.
It's true. It just happened 2 days ago. It was just, he just got the email and he called me. He's like, I don't know what to do with this document.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So much stuff that has come out of this last year. Thank you to Cobus and Roseanne and Mariette and Yvonne and so many people that joined us for this chat this evening and sharing in the good thoughts. Francois, thank you for, I said, I've seen how many people, you're well into the hundreds and thousands of people that you have inspired, that you have given a bright, shining light to throughout this year. And you're building an amazing community and continuing to do that. So thank you for pushing through your own boundaries, making sure to give yourself grace throughout this year, and for everything that you do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate, and thanks for the opportunity. And just thanks to everybody that showed up here tonight. There's a lot of familiar faces. So thank you all very much. And I wish you all a fantastic week and rest of the year, and I'll see you soon.
Okay, and maybe we'll make this an annual thing, because I think we should always look back on all of the goodness of the last year and share in our wins. And you mentioned earlier, maybe you should read more news. I would say read less news. There's not a lot of good that comes out of reading the news, at least not here in the US. So let's stay positive, stay supportive, and let's all keep building an amazing profession together.
Very well. Thank you so much.